So when we left chapter 43, all 11 brothers were in Egypt plus Joseph. So all 12 of them in the same place at the same time for the first time in probably 30 years. The only one that knows it is Joseph. He still has not made himself known to his brothers. He's had to excuse himself on more than one occasion, and will have to excuse himself again to just go somewhere else and cry. So it's weighing on him. He wants to have this over, but he keeps dragging it on. And I'm not sure the full reason other than they deserved it. I think as we read through the text, we're on Joseph's side when he keeps stringing them along. But sooner or later, you have to tell what you know. And so finally, Joseph will let his brothers in on the big secret. They are ready to return to Canaan. But before they do, Joseph sets another trap for them. He tells his attendants to set up his brothers, and then he's going to snap the trap and bring them back to Egypt again to put in front of him. So 44, beginning in verse 1, Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry. Put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph had said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Now go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say this: Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup of my master, the cup my master drinks from, and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing that you have done." I think I might have enjoyed being the steward. To be in on it, but not be responsible for it. It's kind of a good position to be in. And so Joseph is using him as his go-to guy. Give them as much grain as they can carry, just load them down so that they're going to feel like everything's all right. We had a nice dinner with this guy. He seems to be taking care of us. He gave 5 times as much to Benjamin, so he was satisfied when we brought our brother back that we're not spies. We've not come to seek out a way to attack Egypt. Put the silver back in the sacks. So this is 2 times now that they've not paid for all the grain that they've received. But then put my silver cup into the youngest one's sack. And then the servant goes and springs the trap. I wanted to stop for just a second and look at this idea of divination. We've got Joseph sending a silver cup, and it has a dual purpose. It's the cup that I drink from, and it's the cup that I use for divination. Now, there's 2 possibilities. Either Joseph is yanking their chain, and it's just a plain old silver cup that he uses at dinner, or Joseph, like Jacob before him, like his uncle Laban, great-uncle Laban, they used divination. So these are guys that are connected to the one true God, but at some time or another, for some reason or another, were doing divination. To whom is Joseph married? To a priest of On's daughter. Right? It may be that he had run into this kind of divination through that family connection. We honestly do not know. But we do know that he uses the idea of divination to make this cup even more special. So when they get caught with the cup, it's not just a cup. It's the cup that he uses to drink from. It's his personal cup, but it's also the cup that he uses for his divination. All right, verse 6, when he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouth of our sacks. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become the Lord's slaves. This is pretty true fashion for Jacob's sons. They're very brash. They say things off the cuff that maybe if they thought about it for a little while, they might change their mind. Let me give you a couple of examples. Reuben told Jacob that if Reuben took Benjamin to Egypt and didn't bring him back, that Jacob should kill both of his sons. That's pretty brash. Judah pipes in a little later, says Jacob should hold him personally responsible if anything happened to Benjamin. So don't just kill Reuben's two sons, kill me while you're at it. So all of the brash, manly things that Jacob's sons would say, well, now they come up with this one. Whoever has it in their sack, go ahead and kill them, and the rest of us will be your slave. Joseph has no intention of killing his baby brother. That's not the point of the exercise. But the fact that they were willing to make their own sentence before they ever searched the sacks, they were so sure that they were innocent and that they would find nothing. So in verse 10, very well, said the steward, let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free of blame. So he changes the rules. The one that's found will be brought to slavery. The one, everybody else, just go home. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. The steward proceeded to search, beginning from the oldest, Reuben, all the way down to the youngest, Benjamin, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. I mean, what else can you do to us? There's nothing else. We can't figure out the system. We don't know how to play this game. We're in the dark as to what we're supposed to be doing, and every time we do something, something terrible follows. And so, sure enough, they had to load up their donkeys and return to the city. Joseph had not left the house yet. He had been waiting around. He had lots to do, had a big job. He was an important guy, but he was still waiting at the house when they got back. And so they threw themselves to the ground in front of Joseph. You remember when they came the first time and they bowed down to him? And we thought that was pretty good, right? It was a fulfillment of those prophetic dreams that he had. The 11 sheaves bowing down to him, and the 13, the sun, the moon, and all the planets bowing down to him. When we saw that, we thought it was pretty good. This phrase I like even better. All of them came and they threw themselves on the ground in front of him. They're not just being polite. They're not just showing respect. They're terrified. They are sure that everything has come undone now and that they've got no recourse. Joseph said, what have you done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination? So we go back to the divination again. And this statement is one of the reasons that I think maybe Joseph is just playing with them. That it's not necessarily a cup that he used for divination, just that he wanted them to think that he was a diviner. It lended to the idea that no matter what they did, for good or for evil, he knew. He always knew. We talked about mothers this morning. My mother passed away last June, and she knows I'm talking about her now, right? If you have a mother like that, anything you did wherever you were, your mother somehow knew what was going on. Evidently, Joseph just had it on his brothers at that point, that no matter where you go and no matter what you do, I'm going to know. And so he talks again about divination. What can we say to my Lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves, we, ourselves, and the one who was found to have the cup. Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go home. Well, they can't go home. Jacob's already told them what's going to happen to them if they come back without Benjamin. They can't just, how nice, it's just Benjamin that's in trouble, let's go home. But notice who he's talking to. He's talking to Judah. The last time that Joseph and Judah are coupled in a passage of Scripture. We looked at, and I don't remember the chapter headings, but the Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar. Remember that story? He promises her his youngest son. He doesn't give her the son. So Tamar dresses up like a temple prostitute and lies with Judah, and Judah has a child by his daughter-in-law. That's that chapter. The next chapter is Joseph being seduced by Potiphar's wife and running away. Right? So Judah, unrighteous example. Joseph, righteous example. Right? Judah, an example of poor decision making. Joseph, a example of great decision making. So now Judah is the one having to say to Joseph, you tell us, what do you want? We're out of options. We will do whatever you want us to do. Who was it that suggested that they sell him to the Ishmaelites? Judah. So Judah has come full circle now. He's had to throw himself on the ground in front of this man, and soon he will find out why. So Judah went up to him and said, pardon your servant. Let me speak a word to my Lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servants, do you have a father or a brother? And we answered, we have an aged father, and there's a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead. He's the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to see me, so I can see him for myself. And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, the father will die. But you told your servants, unless the youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what you said. Whole reason for this whole situation is that you had to see the younger brother. We brought him to you. We did what you said, and now look where it got us. Here we are at your disposal, your servants, to do whatever you want to. Verse 27, your servant my father said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces. I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now, if the boy is not with us when we go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all of my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in the place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. So Judah, we see a part of him we haven't seen before. He is respectful of his father, maybe a little bit afraid of his father. He doesn't want his father to have grief, and he's willing to take the role of Benjamin as being a slave so that Benjamin can go back home to his dad. So that's a desirable quality in a man. He's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the promise he made to his dad is kept. Does Joseph want any of it? Well, of course not. Does Jacob want any of it? No. All he wants is for Benjamin to be safe and to be with him. Are we going to trade now for Judah? I think Jacob might have been all right with that. If Judah didn't come home, but Benjamin did. 45. Joseph could no longer control himself before his attendants. So he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him. They were terrified at his presence. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there's been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, ruler over all Egypt. So now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near to me, you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will be destitute.'" So Joseph gives them the big picture. Over the last 20 some odd years, close to 30 years, Joseph has come to realize that he has a purpose in life. And his purpose in life was not to be a shepherd in Canaan. His purpose in life was to be a deliverer in Egypt. And he had to go through Potiphar's wife and through prison and through famine to get there. But now he's in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. And he has given his brothers redemption. The very ones that they deserve nothing. They deserve absolutely nothing. Of all the options that he has, this option is the most full of grace. Would you agree? He is second in command to Pharaoh. All he has to do is say, "I want you to take these 10 and march them out and kill them outside. Just leave this one right here. I'm going to keep him." That's all he has to do. Nobody's going to question him. Nobody's going to say, "You can't do that. That's mean." He's second in charge to Pharaoh. Nobody said anything to Joseph. People did what Joseph told them to do. But instead, he says, "God sent me here for a purpose so I could save you. My place in life is to make sure that you're okay." So Reuben couldn't save them. Judah couldn't save them. The one they thought was dead is the one that had to save them. He was the only one that God used to get the job done. So we'll put a bookmark right there in verse 12. And Lord willing, we will pick up there and start looking at the transformation from Canaan to Egypt. You've got to get an awful lot of folks from one place to the other, and an awful lot of flocks and herds and slaves and servants, all to the right place at the right time. But Joseph has finally told his brothers what God did for them in response to their selling him into slavery. Sounds a little bit familiar to me. When you think about Jesus coming to the earth, his whole purpose for being here was to be crucified. His whole reason for living was to die and be resurrected from the dead. All of us deserve to die. All of us at one time or another have sold him out. We lived in sin. We were servants of sin. He buys us back. When he lived the perfect life, it gave him the right to say, "Well, just take them all outside. Just go get rid of them. None of them are good enough. None of them lived up to what I wanted." But that's not what he wants. That's not what God sent him here to do. God put him here to deliver us. And so now that our time has come and we come into the great need, we have a famine of spirit, we have a famine of life. Sin has stolen everything from us, and instead of turning us away, Jesus brings us in. I love the fact that Joseph cried as often as he cried. I love the fact that he cried so loud the Egyptians heard him crying. I mean, that's depth of your soul, chewing you up inside kind of love. And that's the kind of love that drove Jesus to the cross.